You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Christopher Media. Let's make some noise.
Do you want to buy my corned beef sandwich? You don't like my sandwiches, my music? I don't think that's how friends work. Maybe we shouldn't be anymore.
We shouldn't be friends?
We do the same thing you've been said.
When are you I brought you food afterwards and you didn't say thank you.
Come on. This is cliche.
Just smile.
April, have your salmon.
I'm not hungry.
Mom, she's allowed to be depressed.
Thank you.
No one as good as Nick will ever love her again.
Where did this Clara girl come from anyway?
April, she's here.
How come I've never heard of her?
She's like moved here, so I'm just showing her around.
And you thought, before I show her the Chinese theater, she should see Nick's penis?
Hi. You're April.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to go do a shot?
Why are you being so nice to me? I want a reason to give you a black eye. God, you're so pretty.
What about when he grabs your boob like in a tightly sealed jar?
What about when he refers to his dick as a Quidditch stick?
He hasn't done that with me.
I think we should make some rules. I concur. First rule, no talking about Nick. Second rule, no telling Nick.
Are you gonna tell him? Are you a rat? Benjamin, do you want to know what happens to rats? They get shanked in their sleep.
They get their carbon monoxide detectors disabled.
Yeah.
You guys are perfect for each other, you know that?
You're my best friend.
You're my best friend.
I think about you all the time.
You've exhibited very little personal growth.
Who are you rebounding with?
It's just like this girl.
Oh.
It's not what I meant.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm Mike White. I am joined today by Benjamin Kasulke, the director of a new film called Banana Split. That is not to be confused with the horror film from a few years ago called The Banana Splits. This is a coming-of-age comedy, and I really enjoyed it. Check it out on Amazon Prime, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Ben Kasulke. Well, I want to know a little bit more about you, and I want to know kind of how you got your start, because you've done so many different things behind the camera and even some in front of the camera, and how did you get to this position?
You know, I think like a lot of film people, I just got real obsessed with movies when I was young. And I grew up in a pretty remote place, and there was a lot of cold weather and a lot of time indoors. You know, I watched a lot of movies as a kid, and I was always going to the video store, and like that sort of turned into just a fascination with movie making. And then I went to film school in Ithaca, New York, at Ithaca College, and was sort of like just made movies for 4 years as an undergrad. All I did was make movies, and kind of got out of that, and there was a pretty bad recession, and while I was making my final movies in film school, I ended up working with a company out in Seattle that was doing negative cutting, and I was sort of the era of film school student that was still shooting 16 millimeter film, and so I had worked with a company that did some negative cutting for me, and I knew I kind of wanted to relocate to the Pacific Northwest, and so I ended up getting a job with a company at the time that was called Andy Pratt Negative Cutting. Now they're called the Image Treasury. I became a negative cutter. I was like a film archivist, and did a lot of working with camera negative and archiving old TV shows and movies. And when I got out to Seattle at that time, there was a lot of people still shooting on film that were coming through the door as local filmmakers in Seattle. And I got to meet them and work with them on the negative cutting part of their process. Which is kind of a weird, it's like the deep, dark sub-basement of filmmaking. It's sort of like this thing you need to do when you shoot on camera, shoot on film cameras, and you have a bunch of film negative. And in the time before like really high-end digital transfers, people were still cutting original film negative and making film prints. And I was sort of specializing in that for a couple of years, almost 5 years. You know, it was a cool job in that I got to work with some fun people and learn a cool skill, but it was a really cool job in that I got to meet a lot of local filmmakers in Seattle. On the weekends, I started shooting for them. And so I knew how to shoot film, and I had a day job, so I could kind of work pretty cheap, and people were doing like a little short here and there for a couple of hours. It was like a fun project. It wasn't like, it didn't have to be my main source of income at that time. So I was able to try a bunch of different things and work on tons and tons of short projects. And I kind of fell in with a group of dancers, like modern dancers that were doing these kind of like dance theater hybrid pieces in Seattle. And it was sort of a big scene back then. And that group of dancers, a lot of them were getting fine arts grants to make films. And so of the people in Seattle that were making short films, a lot of them were dancers. And so I kind of fell in with them, and I never had any desire to shoot like experimental dance films, but they were super, super fun, cool people and really good collaborators. And I kind of became like one of the guys that just got called to do that stuff for a long, long time. And eventually those short films started to get longer and longer. And some of these choreographers started moving into narrative filmmaking. And after 5 or 6 years of shooting small short projects, the projects started to get bigger and bigger, and eventually they became features. And then one feature would lead to the next. And I kind of started, eventually a couple things got out into the festival world, and I would start doing the festival circuit. And then I started shooting a lot. And that was sort of how it came together.
Around what time was this?
I would have graduated college in 99. And then I bounced around a little bit, but I probably settled in Seattle area, 2000, 2001. I was working in Seattle, but living in a smaller city called Olympia, Washington, which is sort of about 60 miles south of Seattle. And I would drive in a couple days a week and work these really long days cutting negative. And then in between all that stuff, I would go out and shoot movies with people.
One of the earliest things I see on your CV is working with Guy Madden and doing Brand Upon the Brain, which was one of my favorite films that I saw in 2006.
That was actually kind of a natural sort of progression of the story. I for years was working with all these choreographers shooting films for like doing dance stuff and kind of this weird dance theater hybrid experimental shorts. And at the time in Seattle, there was a nonprofit group, Northwest Film Forum. It's still there. They would show a lot of films. They were sort of like a good, very well curated rep art house cinema in Seattle, but they also had an educational segment to them that taught people at really good rates, at really good tuition, that taught people how to make movies. They were a nonprofit. They were like an arts organization. Around 2005, there was a producer director that had made a lot of films in conjunction with the Northwest Film Forum. This guy named Greg Lashow made a couple features in Seattle. He was putting together what he was trying to make as a nonprofit film studio, which was eventually called the Film Company. And what he had wanted to do was, under the umbrella of this nonprofit Northwest Film Forum, he wanted to put together a group that had all of their key film staff on a salary. And what he wanted to do was get this group of people together, and he wanted to kind of take them and then find artists that all of us as a group wanted to work with, and just approach the artist with a deal that says, we want to work with you. We want you to make anything that you want to make. And it just has to be a feature film over 70 minutes long. And it can't be an idea that you've worked on before. His idea was that there's enough kind of like jumping through hoops, trying in the film industry to convince someone to give you money because your idea is worth making your money back as a business venture. And what he wanted to do was to say, the money is already in place. It's as a nonprofit. We have everybody here that can make at the film company that can make your film. So we're just interested in you as an artist. What would you make if you could make whatever you wanted? We don't have a lot of money, but we have people for you. This guy, Greg Lashow, was putting together a group to ostensibly do this film company group. And I interviewed for the job as a DP. When he went to check my references, this guy, Greg, had run a theater group, and a lot of these choreographers I'd been shooting with for years had worked with him for years, doing like late night Seattle theater, cabaret, dance theater hybrid stuff. So inadvertently, everybody I'd been working with for years on these short, like no budget freebie jobs, it all kind of came full circle when they recommended me for this staff position as a guy who would be the staff cinematographer at the film company. And then the first two movies that the film company made were Guy Madden's Brand Upon the Brain and Lynn Shelton's We Go Way Back, which was her first feature. So, I sort of was assigned to Guy and to Lynn because I was the the film company cinematographer, and the film company was making their movies. So it all kind of worked out organically, and it took years to get there. But Guy's the best. He and I have worked together a ton since, and he's become a good friend. And I would not have been able to, work with him unless I'd sort of inadvertently put the time in with all these kind of freebie weekend jobs in Seattle in the times leading up to this film company era. And then the film company went on to make Brand Upon the Brain.
Yeah, because he's always pushing just what the camera can do and those different looks for everything and just cutting edge, but yet throwback look and feel to it.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, that was a dream come true. I mean, all my sort of student film stuff was like that. It was always trying to do black and white and tell films silently. And I was very into making things that were sort of universally approachable because they got around using language, text-based English language. And, I would do stuff in sync sound, but I was very into kind of German expressionism and black and white horror. And so to work with Guy, that's like a gold mine for that. And especially with Brand Upon the Brain, it was, it was all Murnau and kind of trying to channel Sunrise and Nosferatu, and got to shoot all on Super 8 with a little bit of 16 thrown in there. And just what a dream,
You also have worked with another friend of mine, which is Todd Rohal.
Ah, Todd's the best. Yeah, Todd's great. Yeah, we've done a few movies together, and then we co-wrote a little Adult Swim thing a couple of years ago called Mops. And Todd's amazing. I love working with him. He's busy right now. He's got a lot of stuff juggling. But yeah, that's funny. How do you guys know each other?
There was a little film festival in Baltimore that I would go down to, and his early stuff like Hillbilly Robot and Knuckleface Jones showed down there. When
we did Lynn Shelton's first movie, We Go Way Back, the assistant director on that movie was Megan Griffiths, who's a director in her own right. And Megan went to film school with Todd Rohal. Lynn Shelton's first movie, We Go Way Back, got into Slam Dance in 2006. That was like my first real film festival. And Megan was really excited because she was the AD on We Go Way Back, but she was also the AD on
Guatemalan Handshake?
With the Guatemalan Handshake, exactly. So Megan was the sort of nexus of all of it. She knew Todd's whole crew that showed up and had gone to school with a bunch of them. And then she knew Lynn and our whole crew from Seattle, and she kind of brought everybody together. And then eventually, Megan went on to make a bunch of movies, and she helped Todd bring Cataclysm up to Seattle. And so I worked with Todd on that. And then all of us, it was cool. Like Megan was sort of the linchpin of all that stuff. But that's how I met Todd. Was just it all sort of flows together. Yeah, he's the best. I love working with that guy. That is, every time I get in a room with him, it is painful laughing all day, every day. Like working on set with him is a joy. It's the best. You have done so much work as a cinematographer over the years. What are some of the favorite ones that you've worked on? I love the Guy stuff. I love the Lynn Shelton stuff. I have these sort of like, in my brain, there's these little mini chapters of things, like there's this Seattle chapter where for a really long run, 5 or 6 years for a city like Seattle, there was just like movie after movie after movie getting made. So I kind of have this little umbrella of like, there's a handful of Lynn Shelton movies, like, sort of like We Go Way Back, Hump Day, Your Sister's Sister, Touchy Feely. They all kind of meld in with like Megan Griffith's After Hours and the Cataclysm with Todd and Brand Upon the Brain. Like those are all sort of this like wonderful formative part of my filmmaking psyche that I always feel like in the feature films. Those are like I kind of look back on and I get really excited about, because those are the ones that sort of help me become what I'm hoping to be, as far as an artist. And so I had that sort of it's almost like if you had a really, really great, elementary school that was idyllic or something, and like a summer camp that you went to that everybody made movies in. Like that's sort of how I feel about those. So like the personal attachment to an era includes those movies, but then less of a feature film. But I worked on a series for 3 years called Red Oaks for Amazon, and it was with David Gordon Green and Hal Hartley and Amy Heckerling, a lot of really fun directors, and they were great. But it was shot in New York State, and it's sort of like it takes place in 1985 and 1986 and 1987, corresponding to each season of the show. And the showrunners of that show, Joseph Gangemi and Gregory Jacobs, were just like, they sort of like set the bar really, really high for just the sort of what you can do with a production and what you can do with being savvy about your resources as a production entity, and just like they really set the bar high for like how to create a work environment for me. Like, as I move into making my own stuff, that they're sort of the benchmark for like how much fun and how well prepared and how meticulously and sweetly run a kind of business venture can be. One of my all-time favorite gigs I ever had was I did 3 seasons of a show called The Heart She Holler with this group called PFFR out of New York, and they made a show in the mid 2000s called Wonder Shows, and that was at the time on MTV2. But it was kind of like a surrealist, crazy, mixed up version of like a Sesame Street, or like a public broadcasting kids show. That was a show they did before I worked with them, and then I worked with them on a show called The Heart She Holler, which was sort of like they pitched that to me as if David Lynch had directed Hee Haw. Just fun show, and I loved it. Like, I loved every minute of that show, and those guys really. The two kind of main writer-directors, Vernon Chapman and John Lee, they just kind of showed me what you can do with comedy and what you can do with surrealism and what you can do with really creating a world and adhering to like an artistic vision. It was for Adult Swim, and they just had carte blanche to do whatever they wanted, probably because of the street cred they had with Wonder Shows. And so there was never anybody saying no. It was just great. It was just a great experience. And like that sense of humor from those guys really combined with like the sensibilities of like a Todd Rohal, really, that really stuck with me, and it kind of comes out whenever there's like, it's time on set to write jokes. Those are the types of jokes that start to feel the closest to home.
Tell me about Banana Split, because it seems like such a departure from everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah. I think if you were to, just travel back in time and tell me a few years ago that like I was going to make a feature and that this was going to be it, I would have told you were probably crazy. On paper, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but with Banana Split, I've been looking for something to direct for a while. Like, I'd done a few shorts and done a few music videos, and occasionally I would get on I'd be shooting a television series, and they'd have rotating directors coming through of varying abilities, and sometimes you'd get someone that was just starting out and they had a really good skill set with a few elements of being a director, but occasionally a director would come through and might need a little help with planning shot lists or working on coverage or helping out with certain types of blocking to help us get through a day in the right amount of time. And so I had been touching down on some of the skill sets of directing and wanted to try something a little bit bigger, and I'd been trying to sort of manifest that for a couple of years just by talking to other directors or making it known to showrunners I was working with, or just talking to friends about it. And I was looking for the right thing. And back in 2010, I met Hannah Marks we were both at the Sundance Feature Film Labs. She was there as an actress, and I was there as a cinematographer. And everybody knows the Sundance Film Festival, but the festival is just sort of one piece of the pie that's the larger Sundance Institute. And the Institute does a feature film lab where they bring 8 projects, usually first or second time feature filmmakers apply, and they bring these filmmakers to this mountain resort up in Sundance in Utah. They give them a crew, and they give them actors, and they give them, most importantly, a ton of mentorship to shoot and edit the hardest scenes from their unmade movie. And the idea is that you can workshop ideas and things to try out in your directing of a movie in an environment where the final kind of workshop scenes never leave the mountain. They never leave, the lab. And the idea being that like you should try and you should fail and you should screw up and you should see where your skill sets lie, and you should see where the strengths and weaknesses of your screenplay are, and you should see where the strengths and weaknesses of your acting, your direction of actors is. And, the hope is that one would go through that and that lab as a filmmaker and come out and, had played around and had not played around with the final product that is their movie, and that they've been able to experiment but not destroy their film career before it even gets going. And I'd gone a few years as a cinematographer, and they go and they attach you to 2 separate projects as a DP there. And that particular year, one of the projects was the workshop version of Marielle Heller's movie that would become Diary of a Teenage Girl. And so I was helping Marielle shoot scenes from that. And Hannah was there as the lead actress for the workshop versions of Diary of a Teenage Girl. And she and I became friends. And I think we had worked with a couple people similarly, and we knew some people through Seattle Film. Back then, she was a younger actress. She was being asked to do a lot of kind of emotionally tough stuff. And it's a wonderfully supportive environment, but it's also like everybody sees your work on Saturday night. Like all the scenes get cut together and people watch them and talk about them and get critiqued. And it's a tough job for an actor. And she was doing some pretty intense work. And I had been on a lot of sets, especially with Lynn Shelton and Megan Griffiths by that point, where the sets are really centered around performance and making actors comfortable and making an environment where an actor can feel vulnerable but taken care of. And that's not really just the responsibility of the director. You really, as a DP, you need to kind of help set that tone. And so Marielle and I really tried to make an environment for all her actresses, but in particular Hannah at that time, just make a place where she could feel safe. And I think some of that resonated with Hannah. And over the years, we stayed in touch and we became friends. And every time we were like working on things, we would like nudge the other person and ask them to check something out, or like take a look at a script. Or if we were about to work with somebody we knew the other person knew, we would write and ask what it was like to work with them. And just the kind of sort of, it was a mix of like, professional recon and just checking in and showing off what we were working on when we were happy with it, or could just kind of stay in each other's orbits a bit. And in the last few years, Hannah had started to make her own shorts, and then eventually was making a feature that she had co-written and was co-directing with a guy named Joey Power. And Hannah wrote one day and was like, "Hey, you want to get lunch? I want to show you this thing." And she brought a script that she had co-written with Joey Power for what would become Banana Split. And we were just hanging out. She asked me to take a look at it, and I took it home and read it. And I just thought it was really, really, really funny and really, really, really smart. And I thought she just wanted notes on it. And I remember kind of writing her and being like, "I don't know what to tell you. This is really good. I can't wait till you make it." And she wrote back and she's like, "Well, here's the deal. Like, I'm in post on my movie, which eventually came out. It was called After Everything. It was premiered at South by Southwest a couple of years ago as Shotgun, but they changed the name before it came out, and that's out, and you can rent it now." She wanted to make this movie, Banana Split. It was heavily autobiographical. She wanted to make it soon because she was afraid that she would not believably play high school aged for very much longer. She knew that she was going to be in the weeds on post-production with this directing effort with After Everything. That's sort of how I got roped into it in a good way. And she knew I wanted to direct, and then one thing sort of led to another.
How was the relationship working with your writer/friend/lead actress as a director?
It was the best. It was the best. And I don't think that scenario being as successful as it is pretty rare. And a lot of that has to do with Hannah as a person and Hannah as a professional. Like, the story of Banana Split wasn't like a direct play for play of something that happened to Hannah, but it was a version of this movie happened to her, and she used it to fuel this comedy. Because it was super autobiographical, she had certain ways she was seeing it, and she was always envisioning herself in the lead. What's great about Hannah professionally is, like, she's a really solid actress. She's really, really prepared. She's really into the craft of acting, and she's really good at it. The sort of moment to moment, let's get this scene on its feet. Let's rehearse it. Let's talk through, what characters are going through, where we're at emotionally, how this a scene needs to fit into the larger context of a 90-minute film. Like that, those moments with her are almost on autopilot. She's not only lived a version of this story, she's written a preparation in terms of a funnier, more anxiety-ridden version of herself on screen. So she knows it inside out. And so while we're shooting, it's pretty minimal notes with Hannah. Like, as a director, it's kind of like you kind of do these very gentle steerings, and we would play around and experiment, mostly because I knew she would understand that if we tried a few different takes on a comedic or dramatic moment, that she knew that we could throw it into the edit and be able to craft a different type of performance that we might see on set. And so, I had this wonderful experience of working with an actress who's really good at her job, who is incredibly well prepared. She can fully commit to a scene as a performer, and then as soon as you yell cut, she can switch her brain over into like structure writer mode, and we can talk through what's good about the scene and what we might want to try as an alternative to a scene, because 3 scenes later in the screenplay, XYZ is going to happen and we need to earn it, or way at the end, we have a different version of an ending that we might try that would be helpfully motivated if we tried this scene in a different emotional space. And so not only is she wonderfully professional as an actress, she's wonderfully professional as a writer and director who understands structure and understands comedy and understands drama and understands how to sort of build and land a character's involvement with the story. I don't think that's a very common workspace to have when you're stepping into something as a director with a writer, producer, performer that's working in an autobiographical space. So, like, she's a really special, like, not only talented, but very special, especially equipped filmmaker, and that she can structurally and creatively oversee producing a film and also fully commit to a wonderful performance in the moment and still be open to collaborative note taking and ideas. And like, I think someone else could very easily fall into being like obstinate or just dig in their heels because something didn't feel like what their life was like in their mind at a certain time. Whereas Hannah was just like, that could be funny. Let's try it. Or let's, if we do one that's a little more sad, we might earn a moment later, so she just got the idea of the edit, and she got the idea that even very rarely do all of them meet up.
So much of this movie is her, but then so much is Liana Liberato. And how do you find that actress and make it so believable that they can have such a deep friendship?
We were really, really lucky to have her. But what was kind of the best easiest thing about casting Liana is that Liana and Hannah have been really good friends since they were 8 and 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
They're both like working child actors that are still in it and still working constantly. And they, Hannah, in multiple iterations of writing this script, would read it with Liana to sort of perfect things and try things. And Clara, I think, is sort of cast against type as Liana. I think she would tell you that she's not really a Clara in real life, but Hannah and her have known each other for such a long time. When we were looking to cast Clara, Liana for a little while wasn't available, and our shoot schedule for Banana Split was changing pretty rapidly. And then all of a sudden we had this window where not only was Liana available, she was really excited to do it, and we were able to shoot at a time where Liana's a very busy working actress that's pretty in demand. So we were able to like schedule out about 6 weeks of shooting with her, and she was able to commit to it. As a director, and especially as a first time director, it's really wonderful to have two people that are supposed to sell this friendship that feels motivated and real on screen. It's really wonderful that in real life they have 15, 16 years of backstory to draw from. That they were young together and like young working child actors together, living in the same apartment complex with their families, and they're having like a similar kind of childhood. That's but to most people, the child actor's life is an outlier. It's not like you come from a town, you wake up, you go to an elementary school every day, you come home, your parents are dropping you off at school. Like it's just a different lifestyle. So it was really nice to have two people that had gone through that together and kind of had a similar upbringing, if you will, I guess, like to professional. Not only did they have like the childhood experience as actors and, living away from where they were born and having parents that sort of were stage parents to a degree, and going through homeschooling and going through onset schooling together. Like they had that, but they also had the ups and downs of being teenage friends. I think Hannah's really good at playing the more anxious version of herself because she knows how to make it funny. And Liana's really good at stretching beyond what her real life is like. So she could lean into the sort of more fun, faster living elements of Clara and have a good time with it. But then they could both come back to this shared life experience to draw from. So, if we were about to get into a fight scene, we could talk about, when they were 13 years old and they didn't talk for a few months, or when we were about to like have some fun and they were supposed to be high, we could talk about when they were kids and just like hyperactive and totally blissed out of their mind on sugar and running around like maniacs. And, this was a project filled with a lot of sort of gifts from a larger universe, and one of them was your two main actresses have known each other for most of their lives and have all of this backstory to draw on at a moment's notice. That sort of inadvertent character preparation on a low budget film set really, really saves the day of all the things that can take your time away from a scheduled 12-hour day of making a movie without a lot of resources. The one thing I think a lot of directors wish they had was time with their actors. And we didn't have a lot of time to rehearse this, but those two had a lot of time to create these characters just by living their lives.
Ben, it sounds like this was the most idyllic feature debut that you could possibly have.
I mean, a lot of it was, I think a lot of it too was, there's difficulties on any of these sets, right? Like there's difficulties making anything. Like I don't know, I say this a lot with friends, like I'm not into making fun of movies, I'm not into like making fun of someone else's movie. I know how hard it is to get anything made, and to get something made and in front of an audience, let alone have somebody like try and give you some money back for your investors' efforts, is miraculous to me. And I know I live and work in the film industry and it happens every day. And at some point it should feel like this is just business as usual, but there's still a part of this to me that's just like, if you can make anything, I'm not going to make fun of you. Like, like if I don't like your movie, it's probably just that it's for somebody else's sensibilities, or there's just things that aren't for me. But this, like anything else, has its like really hard days, like there was long days. And, we shot a lot of this movie in Syracuse, New York. Of the 6 weeks of shooting, 5 weeks were in the late fall, early winter in Syracuse. And so if you, as you watch the movie, if you can imagine being able to see out some of those windows, there's snow on the ground, and there's snow and rain and sleet in the air, and just tricky long days. And then like the week that we spent in Los Angeles was really long, and there's the sort of war stories that almost anyone would tell you, but I think a mix of having really professional actors, not only in Hannah and Leon, but also Luke Spencer Roberts and Dylan Sprouse and Jacob Batalon and Addison Rickey, who plays the younger sister, and Jessica Hecht, who plays Susan, their mom. There's just, I got really lucky with people that are really good at their job, especially in the performing end of this, which stepping into directing from, if you're coming to it, not as an actor and not as a theater director, I think that the general stereotype of working with actors, quote unquote, it can be pretty daunting. But I didn't have a lot of that. I'd been on a lot of sets and sort of seen successful and unsuccessful actor collaborations, and had a lot of directors that I'd worked with that had both good lessons and lessons that weren't so much for me as far as how to set the tone on set. And there was a lot of pre-education, and there was a lot of mentorship that led up to this that sort of gave some confidence. And then as an indie movie, Banana Split to me actually had a very workable and reasonable budget. And I never felt the financial strain that I would have felt on films, especially early on in my career, where you literally are wrestling out a feature film in 10 days. And the whole thing, including post, doesn't really break $40,000. Like, I mean, the big thing for me is like, you can either like have this idea of what a movie is supposed to be and like stick to that, and the universe is just going to like try to make it impossible. That's one sort of, brain space. Or the other, which I find much more successful, is there's a movie you're trying to make, what it's supposed to be. And if the universe starts throwing these like curveballs at you and monkey wrenches in the machinery, you can absorb those and kind of take it as a sort of a gift, or try to take it as a source of inspiration. And if you do that, the movie's going to be better for it. You're going to be happier for it. The project will become bigger than the sum of the people working on it and the time you were shooting it, or the equipment you have or didn't have, or the location you have or didn't have. Like, so to me, a big part of it is just like, all right, like we didn't get enough extras today. Let's just figure out how to shoot this scene so we use what we have, and we're probably going to get a better idea anyway. 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what happens. In retrospect, it does sound like a pretty idyllic first feature, and it does feel that way. But I think a lot of that was professionalism in the performers in the area where I was probably the most nervous, which was working with actors. And a lot of that was probably just years of learning. It's more proactive than rolling with the punches of low budget filmmaking. It's more like seeing limitations as a gift, you know?
Well, how was the film received when it came out?
We did pretty well. We premiered it a long time ago at 2018, the last Los Angeles Film Festival. That's probably the most nervous I'd been. Was the premiere. I was, we had tested every week or so during post-production. Brendan Walsh, the editor, and we were bringing in friends to get notes, in particular because a lot of the sort of female gender politics that underscore a lot of the movie, we wanted to make sure that Brendan and I are both sort of straight white guys, like on paper, where it doesn't really make sense that we should be telling the story. So like, he and I both wanted to make sure that we were handling certain things with some sensitivity and also keeping the humor intact. And so almost every week we would have our sort of like smart lady friend directors that we'd worked with come in and give us notes. And we had some friends that were really generous with that. So we kind of knew where we stood as far as the politics went. And we'd shown it to enough people that were laughing at the right point that we knew it wasn't just us alone in a room thinking we were being funny. But I was more worried about like the sort of critic / industry end of it. And probably because, I've been working in film for a long time, but I've only really lived in Los Angeles and sort of felt like full time on the outskirts of this Hollywood thing with like, agents in Beverly Hills and the whole, that whole stereotype has really only existed full time in my life for about 3 years. So this is the first time that like that sort of like, what are they going to think with Variety and like, what is LA Weekly going to think? Like those kind of, the filmmaker part of me doesn't really care about the reviews. The sort of career longevity business side of me that thinks like, if I want to keep doing this for a long time, I need to learn how to play the game. That side of me was curious as to how this was going to go down. And when I say curious, I mean totally nervous. That all went really well. The reviews were pretty good. We got a second screening from LAFF, and the people at Film Independent that are sort of intrinsically tied to the Los Angeles Film Festival have always been very supportive with me. And we were sort of like in a bit of a limbo as far as not a lot of movies were picked up out of Los Angeles Film Festival. And so we had a little bit of a lull after that. And then there was like rapid fire. I really went crazy with film festival applications and sort of, the years I'd been going to film festivals, like kind of calling up anybody I'd ever screened with and seeing if we could get a fee waiver. And film festival world is very supportive of alumni and very supportive of new directors. And so I got really lucky, and I'm very grateful to a lot of friends that helped waive fees and get us in front of people's eyes. And we had a really good like year and a half plus of a film festival run. For the most part, had like really good press, and I did a couple bigger festivals and a couple regional festivals and a lot of little tiny ones that I could anytime I could go somewhere I would, and got to travel a lot with it, which was great. Critically, I didn't, it was nice to have that attention, but what I really wanted was to make sure that like the movie felt universal to anybody. Like I wanted the sort of coming of age part of it to feel timeless. And the best compliment I get in that realm is like every now and then I'll get on the phone with somebody who's like in their 50s and they're like, I didn't think this movie was going to be for me at all, and I loved it. And like that's great, or like.
It's got to feel a little surreal for you to have had this out 2 years ago, and now you're talking about it again, almost as if it's a fresh project. But I am curious, what are you working on these days?
I mean, I've had a few things happen in between. It's a little schizo. Like I'm still shooting all the time. I still shoot constantly, and I kind of want to keep shooting as well as directing. And like, I'd like to be able to go back and forth. And so, we had our premiere with the LA Film Festival on like a Friday night. And then on the following Monday, I started shooting, the Between Two Ferns movie, the Zach Galifianakis, movie. And like, so that in the time since has come out. That's out you can watch it on Netflix now. While I was editing Banana Split, I co-wrote and directed an episode of the HBO series Room 104. So if people want to look that up, that's in season 3. There's an episode called Night Shift. That's kind of like the male it's got a little bit of like the male equivalent of some of the stuff that's touched on in Banana Split, but it's more of like a tribute to like 70s British like Hammer horror movies. And it's sort of like my movie about like if Banana Split's about like a young wonderful girl friendship, this movie is about like toxic male adolescents that never really grow up, and sort of about an obsession, like a more than low grade obsession with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. So there's that, and then I directed on an 8-episode. It's sort of an interactive, like choose your own adventure miniseries that's we're in post on it right now, and with all the sort of virus stuff right now, we're at a little bit of a standstill until the industry kicks back in again. But that's a show called Owl Moon, and it's about a band in Laurel Canyon in 1974 that are trying to make their second record and sort of self-destructing, and it's sort of like a choose your own adventure movie with a couple of cool musicians. It's these two brothers who are in the Lemon Twigs from New York, and then this guy Sam France from a band called Foxygen, and James Jagger, and a couple other fun people show up in it. I'm still directing, and I'm still interviewing to shoot stuff and reading scripts all the time, and trying to get some writing in with this semi quarantine that we have in Los Angeles right now. But also I'm recovering from a really long year and a half of festival tours, which is a lot of airplanes and a lot of international travel.
Luckily, you got that done before you can't travel internationally, or
yeah. We got out of the last trip I did. I got out of Italy right as it was breaking. Like, it was pretty intense. But we're home now, and things are good. People are holed up and staying cozy and trying to write, and talking to people about the next thing to direct.
Ben, it was so nice talking with you. Thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thanks for making time and reaching out, and I really appreciate it. And I started going through some of your past episodes. I'm excited to dive into the podcast, and I hope we cross paths out in real life sometime. And yeah, if you're ever coming to LA, please drop a line. I'm around.
If you enjoy this show and want more people to know about it, head on over to iTunes, leave a comment, and rate it 5 stars. Make sure you like and share us on Facebook, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Just search for Christopher Media. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Most importantly, we would like to take the time to extend an extra special thanks to you. Christopher Media could not exist without your support. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Christopher Media. Let's make some noise.